We're in a global warming emergency. These trees are keeping the planet cool. And they don't have any answer to that, right? There's a sort of, a blank.
Dr. Peter Carter is also an author and expert reviewer for the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC.
When you put the roads in and you clear cut, a tremendous amount of CO2 comes up from the forest litter. So what's called the litter, which is the sort of, the leaves and the branches and stuff that's built up over, thousands of years probably, okay? When you start disturbing that, whoosh, huge amount of CO2 goes up. So that's the first thing. If you leave these forests alone, then you're not going to have this big feedback of CO2. So relatively speaking, right, those forests are keeping the planet in a cool situation. This research, which was published by the Max Planck Institute in Germany, using the European satellite data, they've looked into what happens with clouds when you have a forest and when you don't have a forest. And where you have a forest, you have a more lower level clouds. And it's only relatively recently that the scientists have learned those clouds are cooling. We cannot be cutting those forests down. They are the biggest solid carbon warehouses on the planet, right? They have to be left alone, have to be. And that's a matter of our survival, literally, because deforestation accounts for at least 10%, almost certainly more, of our CO2 emissions. And there's no going back. When you've cleared a forest, okay, of course, the corporations and the investment people say, oh, that's fine, we replant. Well, it takes about 30 years for a replanted forest to be taking down a significant amount of CO2. We don't have 30 years. We don't have 20 years. We don't have 10 years. We have no years, right? Literally, we are in negative years as regards action to achieve some kind of security for our children, and that's all the children in the world. It's not just this one forest. Those young people and the elderly people, those wonderful people, are emotionally connected with. It's the whole planet. So deforestation is going on everywhere. And so the fact that these forest defenders here, are putting their comfort and almost their lives and injuries on the line, okay, is the best thing.
Dr. Carter says the recently released IPCC report no longer equivocates about the cause of the climate crisis.
The last assessment said that it was very likely that global climate change was being caused by human activities. Well, to a lot of people, that means actually maybe it's not, right? So this time, and it's been years and years coming, as you say, they made the statement that it is unequivocal that human activities are causing climate change. But much more important than that, for the first time, they made a solid connection between extreme weather events and atmospheric greenhouse gas pollution. This is the first time they've done that. So it's called attribution science. And it was a huge advance, because whereas just a few years ago, the media was always reporting, well, we've got this horrendous heat wave, we've got this terrible drought, but we can't say, right, that any individual extreme weather event, no matter how extreme, is due to global warming. We can't say that. Well, the scientists have nailed it now. And in this report, it's definite. And that is a massive difference in this scientific report to any of the other IPCC reports, that go back to the 1990s.
Do you think it's going to have an impact on how people view the science of global heating?
Yeah, I think so, because every year, all of these things are going to get worse.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because what was anecdotal evidence is now turning into empirical evidence.
Yeah, exactly. And it is dramatic. It's horrid. It's terrifying. There's no pleasure in doing this research anymore.
No pleasure in being right either.
No pleasure in being right either. No. I sort of hate it now because it's so bad. It's so bad. When they're talking about extreme weather events, they're talking about heat waves, they're talking about droughts, they're talking about superstorms, they're talking about torrential rains and flooding, and they're talking about forest fires. That's a huge number of massive impacts. And extreme weather events are the most damaging, always have been the most damaging impact of climate change on human populations and on their crops.
Dr. Carter says that he recently used satellite data from the European Space Agency to make a devastating discovery.
A massive amount of methane, which I'd never seen before, completely overlaying where the Siberian forest fires are. And this is permafrost. This is absolutely definitely permafrost.
Melting permafrost, especially in the Arctic regions of Canada, Greenland, Siberia, and Alaska. 85% of the state sits on permafrost, lending a wicked twist to its nickname, the last frontier.
A really good scientist, Romanowski, has been researching what's happening in Alaska with the fires and with the heating. And he finds that the thawing of the permafrost is happening 80 years earlier at a rate that was not predicted to occur 80 years from now, towards the end of the century. So this is how fast everything is happening, how fast the damage and destruction is being done to our planet by our industrial world economy.
It's almost as if the permafrost is the indicator species.
It is.
Of the climate crisis.
Absolutely, you couldn't have put it better. When the permafrost starts thawing, that's emergency. All of its own, that's emergency. That's the time that all governments should have got together and said, we got to do something about this. Well, of course, the government's doing quite the opposite. They're pushing out more and more and more emissions.
Which compounds the climate emergency, especially in those northern climes.
Global warming increases global warming. That's the big one. And now we've got this happening in spades in the boreal forest, as well as the Amazon.
Because it's turbocharging all of the feedback loops.
Turbocharge is a very, very good term to use, yeah. My particular focus, which is on the climate change indicators, global surface temperature increase, atmospheric CO2, atmospheric methane, atmospheric nitrous oxide, everything is getting worse faster. There's absolutely no question about that. You can see this just by the drought and the heat and the forest fires in North America. Alone, you can see that. It appears, as I said, to have come on all of a sudden. The intensity and the frequency of the heat waves and the drought and the forest fires is accelerating fast, fast, fast. There is absolutely no doubt that our industrial economy churning out greenhouse gases is increasing these extreme weather events, all of them, rapidly today. And that has to get worse.
A legacy that will last millennia.
We are leaving, thanks to our economic, industrial, fossil fuel-based economy, we're leaving our children one hell of an earth. And I co-authored this book, 2018, called Unprecedented Crime, because continuing to spew out greenhouse gases, heating up the planet more and more and more and more, is the crime of all time.
You've talked about political will and the importance of political will in dealing with this crisis. Do you see anywhere that the political will is up to the task at this point?
Good God, no. The political will, what the governments and our politicians and our leaders are doing, is literally destroying the entire planet. They've known, IPCC have told them this particular report, Working Group 1, as I said, immediate, rapid, large-scale reduction in emissions, immediate. 2020 was the last year. The will, the plan, the future is literally to totally wipe out life on Earth, in the oceans, on the land, in the forests. That's the political will that we have. It's a will which results clearly in the greatest evil imaginable, the greatest evil ever imaginable. Sadly, I'm living to see that happen, right? We are in the sixth extinction, mass extinction.
Dr. Carter believes a fast-acting solution to the climate crisis is readily available. Cut government subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. Worldwide, that's about $5 trillion a year, according to the International Monetary Fund.
Take those subsidies away from the fossil fuel industry that our damn governments, right, are using our tax money to give those industries that are pouring out the CO2, pouring out the methane in the natural gas industry. You stop those subsidies, the market just swings right into renewable energy. Renewable energy is increasing rapidly, but it'll just go like that, like straight up.